get this show on the road. It's 3:03. We got about 23 people here, which is awesome. So welcome everyone to our Region 3 webinar. My name is Abby Holovach. So I'm our newest Region 3 Regional Vice President, or our VP. So I'm excited to be able to host this webinar across the region and beyond. So even if you're not a Region 3 member, I mean, it's open to everybody, and that's the beauty to it. So hopefully we'll be able to do more of these webinars. I'm hoping that, especially come spring, as we kind of continue to get some good folks on the roster, we'll be able to offer more and more of these. So if you're interested in speaking, or someone who'd be a good fit for a topic that is beneficial for membership or safety professionals as a whole, definitely reach out. You can, find me on LinkedIn or message me or whatever, and we'll see about making that happen. So I'm excited for our speaker today, Mr. Randy Milliron. So he is a safety manager at a municipality in Wyoming. But we're very blessed to have him here because he's got such a great background. He's been doing so many different things, giving back to the safety profession. So I know he's going to have a lot of wise words of wisdom for us, and he's got over 27 years in the business. He was the 2023-2024 Safety Professional of the Year for the public sector. So again, we got a real treat in store for us today. He's going to be talking about public speaking, which we all have to do it in some form or capacity in any of our roles that we've been in, and whether it's presenting in terms of training or presenting material to upper management, whatever it may be. And I think we always have room to grow. So I'm excited to hear what tidbits Randy has to share with us. So with that, I am going to go ahead and turn it over to Randy.
All right, perfect. Thank you so much for inviting me. Really, what I'm going to talk about today is from fear to fuel, lining up your butterflies. A really funny side note: when I told my wife about this presentation, she goes, "What the heck, butterflies? What do you?" Don't worry about it. So the main point is getting over your fears of public speaking. Like Abby said, I am a safety manager in a small municipality up in Wyoming. Now I'm going to kind of go over the agenda quick, and don't get too blown away. I have a lot of content to cover, and I've got about 50 minutes of material. So I kind of talk fast, so hopefully I can get through it all. So for our agenda, I need to figure out if I can move this stupid thing. There we go. I was covering up my slides. So from fear to fuel agenda. So I have 5 different parts. First, we're going to set the stage. Next, we're going to part 2, change your perspective. In part 3, you're going to prepare and practice. I got to minimize this thing too. There we go. And then part 4, we're going to talk about managing your nerves. Part 5, we're going to talk about how do we teach adult learners. And then in part 6, I'm going to do the conclusion and give you an action plan for you to take home and start to work on yourself. So first of all, setting the stage. First of all, the fear is real. And no good presentation doesn't start off with a great story. And I'm going to kind of talk about my origin story. So the fear is real. And the phobia really is glossophobia, which I didn't know until I looked it up, but it's the fear of public speaking. Funny thing is, the statistics prove that about 75% of the population is affected by this. Even more if you take in our profession. Like Abby mentioned, when we're talking about doing a safety training, leading safety meetings, leading safety committee meetings, those kind of things, we're the person that's up in front. And so it is a really big issue. So we've all been to different presenters probably over our career. I just passed my 28th year in the business, and we've all probably attended those boring or unorganized presentations or safety meetings where the presenter sounded a lot like this.
In 1930, the Republican-controlled House of Representatives, in an effort to alleviate the effects of the the Great Depression, passed the the tariff bill, the Hawley.
Or we've had those presenters, or we've had someone that mumbles and talks like this.
I told Bill that if Sandra's going to listen to her headphones while she's falling, then I should be able to listen to the radio while I'm collating. So I don't see why I should have to turn down the radio. Because
So my goal is to make you a better presenter and not be like either of those examples. So we're going to talk about my turning point. So it talks about a promotion and a panic attack. So many years ago, the first organization that I worked for in Wyoming, I had moved up from a parts laborer, seam cleaner, truck driver, And now I was in a position to be the quality control coordinator. And plus I was like the IT liaison with our Phoenix corporate office. But I got called to the general manager's office and he asked me, he goes, "Hey, did you hear that the safety coordinator has put in her 2 weeks?" And I said, "Yeah, I had." And he asked me, "Well, is that something you're interested in, taking on?" And it's ironic. I love sharing this story because it's pretty ironic that I really only asked a couple questions. And the first question was, "Does it come with a raise?" And he said it did. And I was almost ready to pounce on the new position, but then I got me thinking about something. So as a laborer, as a person that worked on the shop floor, every month we had these safety meetings. So these 1 hour safety meetings that the safety coordinator would put on. And back then we had 50 plus mechanics, machinists, welders, other laborers, and it automatically started me to hyperventilate. I was thinking, oh my gosh. So I asked, the second question was, "Hey, so do I have to lead those 1 hour safety meetings that, Stacy was leading?" And he said, "Well, yeah, you do." And so after hearing those results, that's when my heart started to race. I started to get kind of blurry vision, and I could literally feel sweat pouring off me. I was so nervous. Now, the presentation roadmap that I'm going to take you through today. So we're going to go through changing your perspective. We're going to talk about the bartender story and how I got my start. We're going to talk about prepare, practice, and organize. Those are three key individual items that you're going to need to be a better presenter. Then we're going to talk about managing your nerves and the butterflies that you have. And then we're going to try to connect with those adult learners. So then we'll follow up with a conclusion and the action plan. But first, let's talk about the bartender story. So as I'm sitting there with the general manager, he tells me that I'm going to have to lead these safety meetings. I'm super nervous. I'm almost actually thinking of not taking the role. And then it got me thinking. I'm like, gosh, how do I get out of this? And so um, most of the time when you're talking to your boss, you hear the expression, "Never let your boss know your weaknesses." Well, I had a very honest, open, and transparent relationship with our general manager, a really close personal friend of mine. And so I shared with him, "I don't know if you know this, but I have a huge fear of public speaking." And he kind of looked at me and said, "Are you serious?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Well, let me ask you a couple questions." So he said, you moonlight at night, right? You're a bartender at one of the local restaurants." And I said, "Yeah, I am." And he says, "Well, what do you like about bartending?" And I said, "Oh man, I love it. It's kind of a little part of a power trip that I have something that they need and they have to come to me to get it." And I just really like that kind of give and take there. And he said, "Well, do you ever feel nervous when you're talking to new guests or new customers?" And I said, "No, I love it. I love the fact that I get to meet new people. I'm probably earlier in my career, I was probably a safety wallflower, but out in the public life, I was an extrovert. So I love meeting those new people." And he said, "Hey," so then he threw me totally off the wall. And he said, "Well, how far are you from your customers? What's the distance between you and your customers?" I was thinking, what a strange question. Like, I don't know, probably 3 feet. And if you see these pictures, you can see there's probably 3 to 4 feet distance between us. And that's when he said, "Well, hold on, come with me." And he reaches in his desk and he grabs a tape measure and we go into our training room. And he asked me to measure the distance of the training table. And what was the measurement? It was 3 feet. So he changed my perspective on what I was so fearful of, taking something that I loved, which was bartending, and just changing my perspective. And so what he wanted me to do was treat the audience as my customers. Now, obviously, I'm not going to be serving any libations in safety training. Probably wouldn't have a long career in that. But what I did have was safety knowledge. And so what he wanted me to do is I have something they need, whether they know it or not. Maybe it's a new safety training, or it's a new skill, or it's a refresher of a skill that they've already learned. So he really reinforced the fact that the distance between me and our employees was the same distance that I have as a bar. So he wanted me to treat my audience as our internal customers. So when you're looking at your employees, now this works great if you're presenting to your employees, because they are your internal customers. So it really changed my perspective of talking to, we're talking at the employees, than sharing a discussion about a safety related topic. So uh, basically he wanted me to explain that I'm delivering value in what I do at bartending and as a safety professional. So I changed my perspective. Now, I'm not going to tell you, I'm not going to lie to you and say that it conquered my fear, but it really helped me to get over my fear. So the goal of a great presentation is don't let that hour. If you have an hour, if you have 15 minutes, you have 30 minutes with your employees, you definitely do not want it to be wasted time. When I was a shop laborer and we would go to these safety meetings, and we would go to these meetings, and I remember walking out of these meetings and having journeyman mechanics and machinists or welders use this exact expression. Well, there's an hour of my life I'm never going to get back. Now, as I'm sitting in the general manager's office, I'm the person that's going to be in front of those people that have uttered that same phrase. So I needed to do something different. So the thing that I really focused on with my presentations, oh, I love these little memes. So have you ever been to a meeting that could be an email? And then just because you have the presenter mouse and you're up in front of the screen does not make you a teacher. So I wanted to create an atmosphere where they can learn something, enjoy their time, and have fun. The most fun safety trainings that I had been a part of or that I led were when we got the employees involved in the training. And that just made one, it's easy for retention, and it just makes it a better day.
Are you not entertained?
This is what I feel like when I give a safety presentation. I want people to be entertained. So the big thing is when you put on a safety presentation, you have a lot of stuff to do behind the scenes, and a lot of people don't know that you have all that time and effort, energy that you put into the presentation. It's interesting because I will spend weeks on a presentation that I will deliver to our senior leaders that only takes 30 minutes. So they have no idea what goes into those safety meetings or those safety trainings. But then also, it's funny, my friends and family don't even know what I do. So I saw this funny meme and I had to share it. So workplace safety, this is what my mom thinks I do. I have my nice pristine PPE that's never seen dirt, and I've got a clipboard. What my friends think I do, that I'm in there putting Band-Aids on every boo-boo that our employees have. Unfortunately, what my spouse thinks I do, I walk around with a clipboard and I inspect everything. On the flip side, there's a little realism in this, and society really thinks that we are there to point fingers and push blame. But what I think I look like is Superman in a hard hat. But in the reality, really, most of us as safety professionals are usually buried in work, buried in paperwork, and we want to try to get through that by doing these presentations. So embracing our nervousness, need to embrace your butterflies. I actually saw a presentation on this back in, I'm going to date myself, but back in 1998, I saw a journeyman machinist actually deliver a presentation similar to this. He started talking about butterflies. No matter what presentation I'm giving, whether I'm giving a quarterly safety update to our senior leaders or I'm giving a 30-minute presentation to our employees, I still get butterflies. So the trick is trying to have them work for you instead of against you. So embracing those butterflies, you need to teach them how to fly in formation. And how you do that is you embrace that nervousness. You really need to make it your superpower. So whatever was your weakness before, your kryptonite, let's work on getting better at that so we can actually deliver better presentations. If you're not nervous, then you're probably not engaged with the audience. You're probably not engaged with the content. And if you're not engaged with the content, maybe it's time to choose a different career. Every time I have to go deliver that quarterly safety update, I have the butterflies. They're going. Every time I'm walking up the stairs to go do that presentation, even though I know it's going to be 22 minutes long, I get to fly them in formation, get them to fly in formation because I'm prepared and organized and ready to go. So part 3, we're going to talk about prepare, practice, and get organized. The foundation you really need to focus on is analyze and know. First, we need to analyze your audience. Now, the first thing I have to say, like if you are doing a safety training for your employees, then obviously you're going to know these people. So you don't automatically know your audience. But the thing that if it's a keynote that I don't know who's going to be in the session, that's going to be a little hard to know your audience, but you can get good feedback from whoever is hiring you on why you were there in the first place. But if you know your audience, I want to know what their concerns, biases, and questions are. If I'm going to roll out, let's say I'm going to roll out some new micro learning training, and how I handle it with the city that I work for, I take baby chunks, and what I do is I'll find a division that I want to test it on. So let's say wastewater. So I'm going to go out and I'm going to try to find those unspoken leaders, those leaders that don't have a title, and I'm going to present my case to them. The interesting thing is if I get them to buy into whatever I'm trying to sell, Then when I actually introduce it to the whole crew or the whole department, then I have a lot more buy-in. But I definitely want to get those people involved, have that represented beforehand where I can kind of tell him what I'm going to do. Maybe he's going to shoot holes in whatever presentation I'm trying to do. And it's a good feedback method to make sure that you're covering those concerns, biases, and any questions they have. Now, this is the important part. So you need to know your material. Now, I'm not saying you have to be a subject matter expert on fall protection, but if you're doing a presentation on fall protection, you better know enough to be able to hold yourself. So with me, research is the key. I mean, obviously we have the internet, we have different textbooks, we have different areas where we can do our research, but you definitely want to do your homework before you get up in front of that class of 30 to 50 people and present on fall protection or respiratory protection. Because if you haven't done your homework, and maybe you've been in presentations like this where you can tell that the person is disorganized or not familiar with the topic, it kind of falls on deaf ears. Okay. So organization and the 3G rule. So organize your presentation. You're telling a story, just like today. Your story should have a beginning, a middle, and hopefully within 6 minutes, an end. Okay. You have to land the plane. If you are on a wild tangents and you're not landing the plane, then you're going to lose a lot of your audience. So no death by PowerPoint. Now, all of us probably have different, I mean, there's slides, there's Prezi, there's PowerPoint, different presentation methods you can use. But I want to share a little tidbit. If you are in charge of putting on presentations, you really need to go to YouTube and find Don McMillan's. He does some stand-up on death by PowerPoint. And if you've never done PowerPoint before, this is a great tool because he shows you what not to do. So if you have time, definitely go. Don't do it now, but after the presentation is over, go and find Don McMillan because it's really good. So the 3G rule that I like to incorporate on presenting is one, I want to grab their attention. So first I want to start with a story. Well, it's got to be a relevant story to the topic that I'm covering, or maybe you're going to cover some previous incident accidents. Let's say you're talking about slips, trips, and falls. So you're going to actually pull incident data and you're going to cover those as the opening to those. So you really want to grab their attention. Guide them through your message. It is a journey from beginning to middle to end. And so you're basically walking them through this journey of your presentation. And the last thing you want to do is you want to get them to take action. You want them to leave with actionable items that they can take back to their division or department and start using today. Okay. If you don't, then it was a waste of that time. So practice doesn't make perfect, but it sure can make you better. So practice, practice, practice. The more familiar you're with your content, the more confident you're going to be. Practice ensures that you know your content timing. So just for like this, I want to practice what I preach. So this whole weekend, all I did was practice this presentation. Not all, but many different times throughout this last weekend, I practiced this presentation because I wanted to know, hey, where's a spot where I kind of have a lull in content, or I can maybe add a story. So those are the things you really want to work on. Do not read line by line. You've probably been to these presentations where they put every word that they want to say up on the screen and they start reading to us. Now, for the most part, we can all read English language and we don't need somebody to read us too. So what I like to do is use baby bites, use little 3 keywords up to 7 keywords that's going to allow you to remember what you're talking about and be able to cover that slide without having to read it to them. And then the last thing you ever want to do, you never want to turn your back on them and read from the screen. They are here for the content, but they're here for you as well. Okay. So do not turn your back on the crowd. So the practice challenge. Now this is where I'm probably gonna lose quite a few of you because I'm gonna really test the boundaries of how well you want to be a good presenter. And what comes up to is when we talk about the practice challenge, if you go into deep dive practice of being a better presenter, then you need to videotape yourself. I know, it's probably, oh gosh, people are probably shaking in their boots. The easiest way for you to eliminate distractions, verbal jargon, acronyms, filler words, those ahs, ums, and ohs, is for you to watch yourself presenting that presentation. Now, if that kind of scares you, then you're probably not going to like step 2, which is you need to find some of your peers that you can present to. So find somebody that you trust and respect and do the presentation for them. And then have them give you that positive feedback and that constructive criticism to make you be a better presenter. The whole idea of doing this is to fix the things that are broken. So that's your timings. Maybe you don't have enough time, or you have too much content or not enough content. How embarrassing would it be to get to the end of your 50-minute presentation and you still have 30 slides to go? Or what we experienced also is you get to about 40 minutes and realize you only have 2 slides left. The only way you're going to get better is by practicing. And also, it's great time for you to elaborate on, hey, this would be a good spot where I could put a story, as long the stories have to be relevant to what your content is. Don't go on a wild goose chase just to share a story about yourself.
You can make it better. You can add more stories, more visuals, make it more engaging. This is the old one. I'm best when I got my back to the wall. I like to just wing it. And as a trained improviser and an impatient audience member, I can assure you, most of you are not better when you wing it.
So interesting story. When I ran the mine rescue teams at the surface coal mines that I worked for, basically I would break up the 12 months of training, and I would have each of the co-captains teach 1 month. So for 4 of the months, they were going to be teaching the class. I was not going to be. I was going to be a participant. And I remember asking one of the crews, I said, hey, you guys have rigging training coming up where you're training all 4 crews next month. How's your presentation going? Oh, yeah, we're just going to wing it. When somebody tells me they're going to wing it, it tells me one thing right up front, that one, they're not prepared to present the content. So that crew, I was like, whoa, wait, come back here. What, you're going to wing it? No, we don't wing it here, okay? We're supposed to be professional, and we're going to do a good presentation. So let me teach you how to use PowerPoint. So I actually put on a class for our captains, co-captains, on how to just basically give me the content. I'll build the presentation for you, but you got to have the good content. We're not going to wing it. So prepare for anything. I love to kind of take a pause in this one because crazy things will happen. So you lose your internet, you can't connect your laptop. Those are some of the things tech-wise that are going to frustrate the heck out of you, but you need to prepare for them. So I always prepare. If I practice, and I prepare, then none of this should really affect me. Even when I'm talking about working on contingency plans, the mine rescue team used to get really frustrated with me. Even my safety committee, when we plan our huge June safety training day, I make them come up with an A, B, and a C plan. Because no matter how many times we've done this, almost guaranteed plan A is not going to work. Something's going to happen. We're trying to do gator, obstacle course training, and the gator's down. It's in maintenance. So what are we going to do there? Okay. So you have to prepare for those. I always like to have contingencies, and I would always like to, at the end of the training, after we would do the training, I would be sitting with the captains, co-captains, and I'm like, okay, so what plan were we actually on? They're like, oh, we were on C plan. I'm like, C, and that's why we prepare for it. Practice in the room if you can. Now, every time I give a presentation live, I usually get to the conference the day before. I get checked in because I don't want to try to handle the mad rush the day the conference opens. So I always fly in the day before. I go get my credentials and I go find out where my room is. So there's some really interesting things about why I want to go see that room firsthand. I want to see how it's set up. Okay. So are they going to have everything I need? So we're talking about, when I get to the room, does it have a laptop? Does it have internet? There's certain conferences where they don't have internet, and I have to bring my Wi-Fi puck with me just to connect to the laptop. I also bring my own laptop. Plus, I also have the presentation with all the videos and fonts on a flash drive, just in case something happens with my computer. Remote mouse. Always need to have a remote mouse. I always have 2 of these with extra batteries in my go bag when I go to present. Easel pad with pens. If you're going to have people taking notes or you're giving them tasks or action steps throughout the presentation, make sure you got easel pads and make sure you have good pens. I always bring pens with me as well, just in case they're dry or they run out. So I'm never going to let someone else's lack of preparation is not going to affect how my presentation goes. So I will share kind of an ironic story. So the very first time I ever got to present on the national level is I got asked I think it was 22, I got asked to serve on a plenary panel for ASSP in Chicago. So I did not know the whole preparation, the 6 months of preparation for this event leading up to it. It was probably the second to last time we were meeting before we would meet live in Chicago. And I didn't know what this word plenary meant. And so I Googled it. And as we were all in Zoom, the four speakers, or the three speakers, the moderator, and our liaisons from ASSP, I must have had a weird look on my face, because Chris asked me, Randy, are you okay? And I said, I just looked up what the word plenary meant. So that day, the Assistant Secretary of Labor for OSHA was doing a Q&A with the ASSP president right before us in the main ballroom. Thousands of chairs in that room. So I wanted to make sure I went and saw the room beforehand. So this is my picture the day before, seeing how the crowd works. And I remember talking to a really good friend of mine, Alex. I saw him picking up his credentials early, and so we got to talking. We've done some partnerships with BCSP before, and so I was just kind of talking to him, and he's like, "Hey, are you presenting this year?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm on the plenary panel." He's like, "Oh my gosh, that's wow, first time presenting, you're going to be on the main stage." And I said, "I know, I'm super nervous." And he said, "Well, all you need to do is you just need to focus on those first 4 rows, because when the lights are down, that's all you're going to see." I said, "Okay, that sounds like a great idea. Okay, I like that." So we're behind the curtain. We're all mic'd up. I'm the last one to actually go out. And I can't remember the ASSP president at the time, but she told everybody, "Hey, thank you, Doug, for your time and your questions and answers. And we really appreciate your time to come to this presentation. And oh, by the way, the expo is open." So that's the last thing I hear before they start kind of introducing us to come out there. So when I heard the expo is open, I figured, oh, cool, that room's going to be clear. There's going to be no one in there. It's going to be great. And so I was the last one to come out from behind the curtain. And when I came out, as you can see in the very back of the room and the doors on the right side, they were now open, and they allowed the light to come into the room so I could see all the way to the back of the room. I was super nervous. There was thousands of people that were still there waiting to hear our talk. So yeah, be on the main stage the first time. I'd much rather have these pictures on the right, the small little 100, maybe 200 people in class. I'd much rather do that than go the first time on the main stage. But we pulled it off, and it was very, very successful. So the power of knowledge, the situation everyone dreads. I kind of talked about it earlier, but I'm going to share a real life story that happened to me. So we had hired this safety consultant to come in. It was a lot of people talked about this individual. He was going to come up and teach a class on workplace harassment and drug-free workplace for our employees. And normally when I get to a presentation, that's something I probably should have said as well. When I go to see the room the day of the presentation, I'm there 30 minutes before. If not, I'm there watching the session before my session. So once that presenter's done, I can start setting up my tech, getting mic'd up and everything. But this individual, for whatever reason, he was running late. It was kind of hard to find our location. And he arrived 10 minutes before the presentation was supposed to start. Now, the unfortunate side was he had a Mac laptop, and it would not connect to our projector. And so if I would have had more time, I could have maybe gone down to, he didn't have the right dongle or cord or whatever it was. So I ran down with 10 minutes to spare. I ran down to our local IT rep, said, "Hey, by the way, can you come help, this consultant get his Mac hooked up to our projector?" And he goes, "Man, I'll try, but we don't have any of the cords." I'm like, "Okay, well, let's just go see." And so now I'm sweating profusely, because I kind of vouched for this person that he's going to come up and deliver a great talk. But he taught the class from his printed materials. So he had contingency plan, and he had his slides printed out. And the great thing about it was he could look at it and go, read whatever content was on the slide, lay it down, and speak to 10 to 15 minutes about whatever was on that slide. It was so cool to watch. So he had a contingency plan, and why it worked is because he knew his content so well. There's a story, and I can't remember the guy's first or full name. People just know him as Skipper. He was actually in a session. I can't remember if it was ASSP or NSC, but he was in a session, and an ASSP or an NSC representative came up and said, "Hey, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but the person that was supposed to present today, they missed their plane, so they're not going to be available." And so they kind of opened it up to the room. They said, "Is there anyone here that would like to teach a class? You know, basically from your head." And Skipper stood up, and he gave a presentation. He gave a great presentation with no audio visual, but everything that was in his head. And most people that attended that session said it was their favorite session, because This guy was really engaged with the audience, engaged with his content, and he knew his content back and forth. So the last thing you want to do if you have tech issues, you don't want to claim it. You don't want to be the person that's getting the paper balls thrown at you because you showed up late and didn't get the tech set up correctly. Handling Q&A like a pro. So now there will be some times, whether it's a webinar, a podcast, or a live presentation that you're doing, where you're going to get to the end of your presentation. And typically what they like to do is save the last 5 to 10 minutes for questions. I usually say this at the start of my presentations, please hold all your questions to the end. You know, and you may ask yourself, well, why do you do that? Well, one, I have all my content and timings down perfectly that if somebody asks me a question midstream, it may take me off my destination or my path. So I always tell everybody, hey, just hold your questions to the end if you can. I'd love it. Okay, great. Let's move on. Now let's talk about how you can handle Q&A like a pro. Because if your presentation is meaningful, there's probably going to be somebody in the audience. You're going to have two things happen. You're going to have either the people that raise their hand when you say, hey, are there any questions? They're going to raise their hand. Or you're going to have the people that maybe are a little more introverted and don't want to speak their question out loud. But you'll see those people when all the Q&A is done and then I'm up, tearing down my tech, you'll see a line of people up there that want to ask their question in private. Either way works great for me. But I'm going to kind of teach you some lessons, especially in a big group, on how you handle Q&A like a pro. So the simple trick is when somebody asks me a question, I repeat the question back to the participant because I want to ensure clarity. I want to make sure the question that I'm answering is the ones they want answered. So if what I say back to them, if I paraphrase what their question is and it's not correct, then we have a great communication dialogue back and forth on what the real question is. Secondly, the thing I do is I repeat the question for the whole audience. Now I'm hard of hearing and I usually sit in the first 3 rows, one, because I don't want people to block the screen, and 2, I want to be able to hear them. But those people that maybe they come to church late and they come to the presentation even later, they want to sit all the way in the back because they want the quick exit. When they're, regardless of why they sit back there, I don't really care, but I want to make sure that they're included in the conversation. So I repeat that question so the whole audience knows what I'm going to answer. The next you need to do is if you know the answer, answer it quickly. There's no need to go down a rabbit trail and go into a 15-minute answer for a simple question. The next thing, if you don't know, please state that. I'll share a little more a little later why you don't want to do that. Then if you need time, tell them. If it's some question that needs a lot more content that you need to kind of gather your senses around, then tell them that. Hey, that's a great question. Hey, maybe I can get your business card and then I can follow up with you later. You can always follow up with them later. And I'm going to give you another tip. If you do attend a conference and you are presenting or you are the person that's in the audience and you have a question, this is a trick that I do. So if somebody comes up, Bill comes up and he has a question and he asks the question, I'm like, great, that's a great question, Bill. Can I get a business card from you? So he gives me a business card. I write on the back of the business card what the question is, and I set it down on the table. And then if I can, I answer his question like I can. I had people come up and they want a copy of the slides, or they want a copy of the video that I had, or some of the infographics that I had. Great, I write that on the back of the card, because the last thing I want to do is come back from a conference with a stack of business cards and have no idea, is this someone I met in the expo hall? Is this someone that was in my session? Was this someone I was in their session? So I always like to write the notes on the back of the business card. If you don't know the answer, this is not the time to fake it till you make it. You do not want to lose all your trust and credibility. You've just delivered a great 50-minute presentation. Everyone was participating, they were enthused, and they had some fun. And then you go ahead and ruin it because you're going to try to fake your way through an answer. Not the time to BS through an answer. If you don't know it, say that. And you do not want to give into that imposter syndrome. You don't want to feel like you know it all and start answering questions that are incorrect. It's going to lose your trust and credibility in an instant. You've just spent 50 minutes building up what 1 second will take it away. Thinking ahead. So we all know we're probably going to get some questions. So if your topic, whatever your topic is, if you're passionate about it and you have probably more content than you can fill in 50 minutes, and I can understand that in planning presentations. But what I would like you to do is start to anticipate questions. Think about what a typical person would ask based on your topic, and then start to draft those answers. I would, again, back to the prepare. I would much rather have 10 questions that I think a normal person, a normal safety professional would ask about this topic, and I want to start to draft my answers. It's not going to be finalized, so you're going to, hey, that's a great question. So my response is, no, you still have the dialogue, but at least you're better prepared. You can think better on your feet that way. I love this meme, and this is me in a nutshell. So when someone tells me, hey, great question, I never really hear their answer because I'm busy congratulating myself for asking such great questions. So don't be that person. Listen to the answer if you ask the question. So part 4, manage your nerves from within. This is why we're really here. I mean, this is talking about our butterflies, right? So you need to calm yourself from within. How do you do that? You breathe. There's so many deep breathing exercises you need to do prior to, whether you need to go in the bathroom and do these deep breathing exercises, or if you're behind the curtain. My advice is don't do it in front of your audience. You might creep them out, or they might like quickly check out of your presentation and run for the exit. So the next thing you need to do is hydrate. You want to drink plenty of water the day before and the day of. Most of the time when you're in those conferences, they always have a couple of bottles of water sitting up there. My advice is remove the cap so you don't have to fiddle fart with it. You just grab it and take a drink. I always have my water bottle with me so I can get a quick drink, but definitely want to hydrate the day before and the day of. Sleep. I cannot say enough about you need to get good sleep. The last thing you want to show up for your 8 o'clock presentation and you got in at 2 in the morning and you got bags under your eyes and you're either hungover or you're just lack of sleep and you're just tired. That's not the professional presentation you want to put forward. And the last thing is pause. Anytime you need to pause, whether someone asks a question or you're watching a video, the reason why I love to include videos in my presentations is because I can pause, take a quick drink, get rehydrated, because you're not even gonna fathom how many calories you burn standing up in front of a room of 1 to 500 people and you're presenting to those people. You're gonna get dehydrated rather quick. So use body language, but don't use it as a crutch. Okay. So I'm going to kind of talk you through this. So smile and make eye contact. Do this. So if I'm getting ready to do a presentation, I will find somebody in the audience. I will smile at them. They smile back. That's a great release of important chemicals to build my confidence. If I look at somebody and they're frowning and I smile and I make them smile, oh, even better. Okay. So always like to smile. You don't want to be up there and be all grumpy, stick in the mud. And yeah, I'm here to, boss told me I have to do this presentation on fall protection or lockout, tag out. And that's the other thing I want to this is kind of a side tip, is when you're up in front of a group, don't tell them that you suck at presenting. I don't know how many times I've sat in presentations where they're looking at their feet and they're like, well, I'm really not good at presenting. Sorry. Never apologize. Okay. If you've done your preparation and you've practiced your presentation, you're not going to be looking at your feet. You're going to be looking at the audience. Okay. So look for positive affirmers. I always like to find those people. Maybe it's someone I know in the audience. Now, obviously, if this is your employee, you're going to know everybody in the room. But if you're doing a keynote or you're doing a presentation at a conference, you might not know anybody in the room. So I look for those people that are affirmers. So let's take a look at this picture and I'll kind of point out the affirmers. So first we have this lady in the front row. She's smiling at me. She looks like she's engaged and she's ready to go on this presentation. The girl next to her, she's so happy. She's looking at her and her energy is now transferred to her. Now, unfortunately, the person next to her, I don't know if she's going to be one of my positive affirmers or not. But the one I want you to focus on is the guy in the back. This guy's in the back taking selfies. I'm not going to win everybody over, and I'm totally okay with that. But that's not somebody I'm going to look for positive affirmation as I'm doing my presentation. So use measured eye contact. What it looks like is when I'm talking to you, if I'm stating a point or a point that I'm trying to prove in my topic or my presentation, I'm going to stay keeping my eye contact on you. Now, I don't want it to be lingering, and I don't want to feel like I'm staring through you. And also, I don't want to have darting eyes. Darting eyes is you look at somebody and they're making contact, and you look over here and that person's looking at me, and now you've just increased your nervousness. So keep that measured good eye contact, and then move on to the next person. You don't want to be this person on the stage. You don't want to be creepy, okay? So make sure you use good measured eye contact.
Okay. Good afternoon, fellow students and Miss Melody. Today, I will be doing my presentation on penguins. Penguins are birds that are flightless.
Yeah, don't do that. Okay. I show a lot of things of what not to do. Okay. So now the power of visualization. So these different techniques that we're going to use is visualize yourself delivering a great presentation to an audience that's interested and enthused, smiling and participating. Now, I'd love to have a session where these people are clapping for me and I'm excited. Yeah, it's going to, maybe it's going to pad my ego. No, it's going to make sure I did a really good job. But you want to have that positive self-talk. So positive in, positive out. Same person that a good friend of mine that when she stands up in front of her audience and she tells her that she's not a very good presenter, she's not putting positive out there, so she's not going to get any positive in return. So always have that good self-talk. But self-talk can be your friend, but it can also be your enemy. Now, if you have a class like this is probably over stereotype for this session. But if you have people that are falling asleep, granted, it's going to happen. Maybe your topic is really not that good, or maybe you're covering a second shift that they're staying after their shift just for your safety training. So don't focus on the people that are falling asleep. Okay. Deliver with intent. So you need to pause, speak slowly, and move. Now, normally, if I'm in a room, I definitely use all three of these. So before you open your mouth, pause, make eye contact, smile, and then start talking. Okay. Speak slowly. So now I'm really bad at this because I do talk very fast. So it's really hard for me to speak slower when I'm delivering content because it seems like I am going so slow in my presentation. Now, granted, there's a happy medium in between there, and the different fluctuations in your voice is going to make it a more entertaining presentation. So use those longer pauses when you're looking up on the slide and you see the next sentence that's coming up. Take that pause and deliver the content confident and without using any of those filler words. Move around. If I'm in a room, this is really hard for me standing in one spot and I get to move like 1 foot to the right and 1 foot to the left. So I like to move around. If it's a room, like let's say there's 8 circular tables with 8 chairs at each table, I love to move around the room. You're not stuck in quicksand. You do not stand in one spot and present your presentation like that. It's going to be super boring. You need to move around. Now, I do have to stress a little about personal space. So as you get closer to someone, you really can determine their bubble on where their personal space ends. Because when you start getting close to it, if they start moving away, then you've met that bubble area. You need to stay outside of that area. But if you're walking around a group and let's say they're doing some action planning, or you've given a question for the group to answer, and you walk up the table, you don't want to leer over the person. Just stand at the table, comfortable distance, and see if they have any questions.
When I pause intentionally to give you time to breathe in the lesson, to be able to process it. If you don't become comfortable with the pause, your speech will be littered with non-words and filler words. It's called verbal clutter. And when you've got lots of ums and ahs, what it does is it decreases the clarity of your message dramatically.
And that's the last thing we want to lose is the clarity of our message. If we put all this time and effort into this presentation, the last thing we want to do is take it away with those filler words. So engaging the audience, I like to use the Charlie trick. I'll explain it here in a minute. You need to remember that they're there for the content. Now, there are certain presenters that I would say have a following that regardless of what they're speaking on, the room is going to be full. Okay. They're still delivering great content, but they're great presenters. That's why people attend those sessions. So you need to remember you're not there to make it all about you. It's about the content you're delivering, the presentation you're doing. So I like to stand outside the door. Now it'd be awkward if it was our employees, but I still do it there. Then I'll stand outside the door. I'll get all my tech all set up. That's why I arrive 30 minutes early. I get everything set up. I get mic'd up with the tech people if I need to be mic'd up. And I'm out in the hall and I'm greeting people as they enter. I'm looking at their name tag. If it's a conference, I'm like, hey, Mark, good to see you. And I usually stand next to the sandwich board that says what classes are there in this room. And I'll quietly point to my session. That's the one you want to go to. And they'll go, oh, yeah, that's the one I'm here for. Oh, great. Grab a seat. The best seats are towards the front, I always like to say. So I like to greet them. And I remember their names. I'm not as good as my mentor. My mentor can be in a room of 50 people and remember everybody's names. I'll be lucky if I remember my own name, but usually I can get 2 or 3 that I can remember so I can call on them. So I like to use their names later in the presentation. So this one presentation, case in point, one of my mentors, one of the guys that was there, his name was Charlie, and this is why I named it the Charlie trick. So he happened to glance down at his phone, and the presenter didn't call him out. He didn't make it a negative feeling, but he said, he looked at him, he said, "Hey, Charlie, is everything okay? I mean, if you need to step out, you can go ahead and step out." And he's like, "No, that's okay." And what it did was everybody that had their phone out, put them away. So normally when you're at the start of the presentation, you usually say, "Oh, please everybody silence your cell phones or put them on vibration only." And there's people that still don't do that. And there's some people take notes on their phone, which, that's fine too. So, but I want to be able to use their names later. So if I'm talking about a topic and I make a point, I'll look and say, "Do you agree with that, Charlie?" Now, what that does is it makes sure everyone else in the room is paying attention because I just called on Charlie and I remembered his name. And then also it gives them a sense of belonging. So you don't need to make it awkward. If you look at somebody and they're looking down at their phone and you purposely call them out, that's not going to have a positive effect. So look for those people that are your positive affirmers, and those are the ones you're going to ask for agreement. Now I'm going to talk about the adult learning principle. So why does it matter? Now, I would love it if I had a class like, look at these people. They're attentive. They're looking up at the presenter. There's no cell phones. It's great. And I would love to be in a presentation like this. Or maybe this one, people are smiling and they're laughing and they're having a good time. Chances are it's more like this. Okay, so you've got the two guys on the right. We'll talk a little about body language. So everybody probably realizes that somebody that crosses their arms, you can read into the stereotype that they're closed off and they're not listening and they don't believe in what you're saying. And then you have the one that's on my far left that he looks like he's about ready to point at me. Like he does not agree with something that I am saying that's on this piece of paperwork. And then the guy in the yellow heart hat across from me, he's got details that he wants to get off the plans and he wants to get it off his chest. So I'm going to share a little more about body language here in a minute. So if you see this, you can't really stereotype it. And because not everybody is closed off. Very key point. So when I was in vibration at the first place that I worked here in Wyoming, my boss, he was the manager of the vibration predictive maintenance unit, and I was one of the vibration analysts. And so he called me into his office and he started telling me about the different clients that we were going to have to go see that week, or that I was going to have to go see. And I instantly went like this and I crossed my arms. He was so caught up in body language that he stopped the conversation and said, "Oh, what don't you agree with?" And I was just looking at him like, "What are you talking about?" And he goes, "Well, you crossed your arms, so obviously you're closed off to whatever I'm saying." I go, "No, it's freezing in your office and I'm trying to stay warm." And he goes, "Oh, okay." So remember, don't try to read too much into body language. So I like to take this picture. So you have the manager sitting at the desk and he's doing kind of a line out meeting. You've got the person that on the far left that he looks like he's getting ready to take notes, or he's talking about things, writing down things that he needs to do. But I want to focus on the guy that's standing up. He has two hands in his pocket. He's got his one foot over the other and he's staring off in the distance thinking, "I would love to be anywhere else but here." Okay. That's probably some positive body language that I could work on. So what we need to do is anytime we're in training, we need to think about the person that's sitting in the seat. What's in it for them? Adults need to learn why they're here. So whether this is the greatest one that I remember is teaching a bloodborne pathogens presentation. And, I had a whole back row was all police officers and they're all arms crossed. They're, having side conversations and they don't even want to be there. So I remember, now you have to be careful when you do this, but so I was pretty familiar with the officers and the lieutenants who were back there. So I walked back to one of our CSOs, our community service officer, and I said, "Hey," I go, do you really, do you have a lot of faith in your nitrile gloves, your latex gloves?" And he said, "Yeah." And I said, "Okay." And I said, "Well, okay, can I borrow a pair?" And he's like, "Yeah." And I go, "Okay." So I put him on and I took a pen, and I don't really have a pen. Well, I guess I do. So I took a pen and I stuck it through the glove. I did not have the point out. I just stuck it through the glove and the glove popped off my hand. And I asked him, "How confident do you feel in your gloves now? If you work with me, I can actually get you a better, more thicker pair of gloves. It's going to be more resistance to those kind of things." I had all of their attention after that. Okay. So I'm not going to go into the 6 assumptions of the adult learners in detail. Basically, they need to know why they're there, what self-concept, what training do they come to the meeting with, their total adult learning experience. Are they ready to learn? Is the orientation of learning, is the setting set up for a good orientation of learning? Are they motivated to learn? Okay. So now I'm going to talk about the three main styles of adult learning. So the first one we're going to talk about is visual. So they learn through seeing. Best suited for these types of trainings are going to be diagrams, charts, graphs, flow charts, and even videos. So examples of that, maybe you're going to take them through a process flow chart, maybe your behavior-based safety flow chart, or it's going to be a video demonstration. I don't have time for this next video, so I'll just show it to you quick.
Why not put together a fun blooper reel to give you a peek?
There we go. Okay, on to the next one. Okay, auditory learners, they're going to learn through hearing, speaking, and having discussions. So best suited for these are going to be your lectures, discussions, Q&A sessions. Here's an example of our brainstorming session we did I guess that was last year, where we're trying to get to the bottom of the root cause of backing incidents with our vehicles and equipment. So they're going to really love those types of adult learning sessions. So examples, group discussion, where you're actually talking about a topic and you want to get input from the employees. That's called a discussion. A lecture is when I talk and you listen. And then maybe you're going to do a lecture reviewing key concepts of a new software program that you're rolling out. Podcasts, audio clips. I love these because you have really good hosts that have great guests on there, and they provide really valuable content that you probably aren't going to get anywhere else. Lots of them that you can find on the internet. So self-reflection question, can I explain this to someone else based on what I heard and what I discussed with the other fellow classmates? Then the last one is kinesthetic learners. They learn through doing, moving, and doing physical labor. Best suited materials here are going to be hands-on activities, role-playing, simulations. Examples would be fall protection. You know, you're going to be tactile. You're going to have a fall protection harness. You're going to have a lanyard. You're going to show them what to look for when you're doing your competent inspector inspection. Confined space training. When I was at the surface mines, we talked about how you don and doff your SCBA and your bunker gear. And we've all probably had to participate in first aid training where we have to do the skills every time. So that would be another example of that. So self-reflection question here is, can I demonstrate the skill that I just learned? That I just demonstrated, can I show it to someone else? Tell me and I will forget, show me and I may remember, involve me and I will understand, Confucius. So key adult learning needs, we talk about the willingness and foundation. So willingness, I like to use real life examples, real life stories that coincide with the content that I'm presenting. Okay, I can't say that enough. Then the foundation, I want to use their experiences to help them make the connection. So maybe a tabletop session where you're actually doing a emergency preparedness tabletop discussion with your different departments. Self-direction, this is where I love doing team buildings for any of our trainings. I like to give them vague rules and then watch how they do, and then see how they're successful or not. So the retention loop, this is something we did at the coal mines. So I would always tell them what I'm going to teach. Hey, this is the agenda today. These are the things we're going to go over. Then I teach them that. Then I have them tell me what we taught today, and then I have them demonstrate it. The easiest way to kind of coincide this with the mine rescue is patient assessments. We would have them come in and do patient assessments, and if anytime during the course they messed up, we would say, lay down, you're dead, go out in the hall and send the next person in. Okay, we wanted them to do it enough times till they got it right. So I like to add in different activities in a lot of my presentations. So in competitive learning, that's your competitive games are going to reinforce the new skills that you just taught them in the content today. I want them to do it until they get it right. And then people love to win. People have gone out of their way to win a simple candy bar in a safety training or a donut or something like that. So I love the activities. Most people like competition. I'm kind of one of those people. So in summary, I'm going to deliver you your action plan. So the three key actions for a great presentation: change your perspective. Yes, if that's part of your job that you have to be in front of that group, you need to change the way you're looking at it. Remember, you're delivering value to your employees or a keynote or at a conference. Next, I cannot spend enough time talking about prepare and practice, know your material, have those contingency plans set in order, but practice, practice, practice if you can. And then engage and move. Use the Charlie trick or the retention loop when you're doing your presentations, because you want to make sure they're retaining the information you're giving them. Final thoughts. One of my mentors for the last 28 years, John C. Maxwell, learn or live to learn, and you'll really learn to live. And then Mark Driscoll, everyone has something to teach you if you're humble enough to learn. Another comment or another quote from John C. Maxwell that I love is, don't be the smartest person in the room. And what that means is be able to learn something new from someone else. If you go in thinking you know it all, you're not going to be in an opportunity to learn anything. So my final message is take control of your butterflies, turn that nervousness into your superpower by teaching them to fly in formation. How am I going to do that? You're going to learn to do that by knowing your contact. Again, prepare, and practice. Harness those nerves, and you too can be a great presenter. But we have to talk about what happens if I mess up. What happens if the video that I want to play isn't working? Okay, let's talk about that.
So how do you recover from an error that happens? Anytime an error occurred, I never made a big deal out of it. If you make a big deal out of something, everyone's going to make a big deal out of it. If you fumble, you take a moment, you pause, you compose yourself, take a deep breath, and you continue. You don't make a big deal out of it.
Okay, so now, Abby, this is where I'll have you come back on camera or on audio. And were there any questions in the chat? Because I don't get to see the chat.
There were just a few people asking if this was going to be shared after the fact, which I let them know yes. So all this content we do.
Hello.
Hello. I don't know who just came in. They're really excited. But yes, we'll share the content. But yeah, just open the floor. If you want to come off mute and ask a question, any input, feel free. Now's your time.
Hey, Abby, this is Skipper. I
Skipper!
don't have it. Hey, thanks. The
He's
following
here.
was a paid political announcement. Thank you very much, Randy.
I love it.
But I do have a comment on his comments about practice. If you've got the latest version, 2019 and above of PowerPoint, there is a rehearsal tool, and the algorithm built into it is fantastic. All the things he's talking about, timing, word usage, reading from a script. I've tried to trick it and I can't. It's a fantastic tool. So you don't have to expose your dog, your kids, or your wife, or go in the bathroom and lock the door to practice your presentation.
Yeah, that would be funny. I'm so glad you're on here, Skipper. I hope I did you good with that story.
It was interesting, let's say the least. The guy didn't show up, and several students who'd been in a presentation of mine before said, "You can do this. Why don't you do it?" So we did.
That's awesome. Anyone else? Bueller?
No, but I think that last point about when you do make a mistake or when something goes wrong, not making it a big deal. It's kind of like when you're like a little kid hurts themselves. If you run over and you're like, oh my God, are you okay? Like freaking out, then they cry more. But if you act like nothing's wrong and no one, you roll with it. I was given a presentation at the Sabine Natchez chapter's conference last year, and I was on confined spaces. And at one point in front of the entire group, I said argon ass instead of argon gas. And so that was, of course, then they all laughed, and I had to laugh too. But it's like, things are going to happen. So you just got to roll with it and not make it a big deal.
Yeah. I mean, because if you make a big deal, then that's what they're going to remember from your presentation.
Yep, exactly.
And big deals can be turned into small deals with preparation. If you've got and technology, it's great, but hopefully everybody should have a plan if technology fails. And what do you do?
Always have that backup plan.
Yep.
Anyone else? Well, if you're thinking of a question, then I'm just going to put my contact information up here. Oh, look, I put it up there, Abby. Ooh, we'll have to edit that later. God, darn it. Oh, see, even pros mess up. So you can scan the QR code and go to you can contact me through my LinkedIn. Also, I have my YouTube channel as well. You can scan that QR code. You can always get a hold of Abby. She has my contact information as well. But I think that's it. I just really appreciate having the opportunity to be here to share with you.
Thank you so much. That was awesome. I know I'm sure everybody here had at least a handful of takeaways. So thank you so much for presenting. We really appreciate it. And again, everybody share this after the fact. We'll post on our LinkedIn with a link to our YouTube page that we've just now started. So we've got one other video on there, and this will be the second one. So we'll be able to share it throughout the region and beyond.
That's
Thank
awesome.
you guys so much. I really appreciate everybody jumping on. Thank you, Randy.
Yeah, no problem. You guys all have a great day.
Bye, everyone. Thanks for joining.